Morning. So today we're gonna talk about slope-intercept just to make sure people remember all the pieces of it. And then for today's assignment, I'll give you various situations where you're gonna choose between the point slope format that we talked about last week or slope-intercept. Really, they're both correct. There's just some situations where slope-intercept is gonna be easier in cases where point slope will be easier. So the first thing I wanna clarify is just remember that your vertical, your up and down axis, that one's your y-axis, and your left and right axis, that's your x-axis. So when we're thinking about our axes, remember wherever I cross, this is my y-intercept. So I don't care where it crosses the x-axis. That's not going to be useful for our equation. What I do care about is where we cross the vertical axis. And when we're thinking about that point, notice how it's going to be wherever the x value is 0. And then whatever you get for the y value, I'm going to put a b there because that's where we get our y equals mx plus b. So whatever value the y-intercept is right here, that's going to end up going into our equation here. All right, so just remember, here's our slope, and this is our y-intercept. Cool. All right, with that said, let's take a look at a few different cases. And I just want to make sure that you're familiar with multiple setups. So here, once again, here's our y-axis. And let me label this. Here's our x-axis. All right, in this case, I see my y-intercept is right here, and that's the point 0, 1. If you remember, we're thinking about that as 0b. All right. The other thing is make sure we're paying attention to our slope. So from this point to this point, I see we're going down 2 and to the right 3. So the only catch is, remember, when we're going down 2, and then we're going right 3. So in this case, my slope then would be -2, 3. All right. So putting it all together, that's the equation for this line. So once again, our b value in this case is 1. And our equation says plus b, so plus 1. And then our slope is just like we've been talking about before. You can count it, how far down, how far over, down to over 3. All done. Cool. All right. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say I give you the slope, and I give you the point 0, 5. So right away, the 0 here, that should tell you that this point here is a y-intercept because the x value is 0. So if I think of this as 0b, my b value is going to be 5. And so the equation for this line, since I gave you the slope, should be this. All right. And then let's adjust this one a little bit. Let's say instead I had said this was not a positive 5, but in fact it was a -5. The only thing that would change is that this would be plus a -5. Or so originally, just to clarify, I had a positive 5 here, but then I made it a -5 just to show you what would happen. We follow the same format. You're adding -5 now, But if you want to, just to keep that simpler, you can always put a -5. So that's just to illustrate that even though it's y equals mx plus b, if I end up with a negative in my y-intercept, it's going to be plus a negative, which will make it show up as a minus in its simplified form. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. In the last case is here I'm giving you 2 points. In a lot of ways, actually, I think this one is nice because you could put it in point slope form like we were last week, because I just gave you 2 points. But in this case, notice how one of them is 0, 9. That's a y-intercept. So slope-intercept form works great here too. But in this case, because I gave you 2 points, and I didn't give you a graph and I didn't give you a slope, you're going to have to take a minute to find your slope in this case. So you could always plot these on a graph and then count the difference between them, or as long as we call these 0.1, this is a y, and 0.2, we can also do our calculation here. So that would be 6 minus 9 over 5 minus 0, which would be -3 over 5. So here's our slope. I just found the difference in y values over the difference in x values. And now, since this is a y-intercept, here's my final equation. All right. So let's label this slope-intercept. And then the other thing I want to point out, just as a reminder, is if I had said point slope, in this case, let me scribble that out. I might have done something like this. That was supposed to be an arrow. All right, so just to illustrate the difference, remember this is slope-intercept because it uses my slope and the y-intercept. This one was point slope because it uses the slope, but then it just takes one of the points here, y minus the y value, x minus the x value. So here's the difference. And like I said, there's going to be cases where this is easier and cases where this is easier. So once again, today's assignment will ask you to choose between the two in some cases. So as long as you are comfortable with the one or the other, you'll always be in good shape. All right, good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.